Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Thanks for joining us. So today I'm with Greg from RoxLyfe. So he is the king of data in my eyes anyway. We're going to go through some sled push conversation, some topics of interest around that, a little bit of data that Greg's prepared. Greg, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us what you've got for us.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Greg. I run a website called RoxLyfe.com, RoxLyfe, and it contains articles all about Hyrox, a bit of a Hyrox geek. I've gone deep on some of the data around the times, the stations in Hyrox, and in particular of late been looking at some of the sled push times and how that might be changing throughout the season, how that might differ from venue to venue and continent to continent. So that's what we're going to delve into today.
It's not a hot topic at all, is it? So yeah, what have you got data for us? Let's have a little nose.
So I started looking into this really after competing in London at the end of April 2022, and that was my third Hyrox event, and I've done a fair amount of sled push training. I was all right at sled push anyway, really. I've done a fair amount of training. I knew roughly what I was expecting to get time-wise at that station. But when I got to it, like, it was just so much harder than I'd been expecting, and so much harder than I'd experienced in Manchester and Birmingham. So
yeah, it's completely different, right? Like the day compared to any gym I've been to, and I've been at gyms all over the world at this point, like, and had to go and got in and trained on them, and it's never the same as getting in and doing a Hyrox sled push, and it's baffling, but it's also like something that we need to learn and understand the races, the season, and also like where about is different and why potentially. I mean, and what can we do about it? Like, so is it getting harder, or what do we think?
Yeah, so after London, I ran the data on the top 10 sled push times in the pro divisions for men and women in London, and also from Manchester and Birmingham. And you can see that on the men's side, London was 59 seconds slower than Manchester and 49 seconds slower than Birmingham. So a reasonable amount if you're talking about just one station, 40% slower than Manchester. On the women's side, it was less clear. 20 seconds slower than Manchester, and it was actually 5 seconds quicker than Birmingham, though the amount of there were only 13 female pro competitors in Birmingham, so the amount of data that we're basing that off of might be skewing it a little bit. So it definitely felt slower than previous UK events. I think that was your experience as well, right, James?
Yeah. So this is the latest London, right? So this is the one that's just hasn't long been. Yeah, I'll be honest. Like, when I came into it, I hit that sled and thought, oh God, this is a different race. This is I came in and had a game plan in mind, and I've seen a couple of guys that I would expect to be with come in and leave. Like, while I was on my third push, they do a whole length ahead of me, and I think overall people. After speaking to a lot of people afterwards, including some of we had some big names fly over across the world to compete in London, and there was definitely a few people that felt the difference, and that's a big gap. When this was the last race in the world to be able to qualify for the World Championships of Vegas. Now, 59 seconds slower. Like, we're talking the back 5 of the top 15 in the world for the guys at least was separated by roughly a minute, maybe not even that, like less than a minute. If you can make 59 seconds up, I'm sure. So like, you just had David McGee break the hour in Vegas, and he didn't get a spot in London for the top 15 because his time was too slow. I mean, 59 seconds difference. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but it could have made a big difference to his race.
Yeah,
I'm sure he would be claiming that anyway, to say the least, and the data backs it.
Yeah, definitely. And my personal opinion is, like, 59 seconds slower on the sled probably translates to a more than 59 seconds difference in your overall finishing time as well, right? Because if you get to the sled and it just blows up your legs and you're pushing harder than you expected at that point in the race so early on, then it just affects everything from that point onwards, doesn't it?
There's no doubt about it. Like, I remember coming off that sled in London, and walking the first part of the rock zone because my legs were like jelly. And it was like since the original London, where we was my very first race, I've never walked in the rock zone. I've determined not to. Like, I'm not losing time there. But this one, my legs were blown up. So like I'd love to get the stats on it for myself and go, what was my next run? I bet you it was a lot slower than I was expecting it to be, because you're trying to find your legs again, right? Like there's like a brick session where you come off something into another thing, and that's that whole thing. But you've got to be ready for that, and you've got to be really tuned into that when it's a minute slower than you're expecting it to be, and the fatigue that takes in.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I posted this on Instagram, and then someone commented and said, take a look at Leipzig. Like there was talk about whether it's the sleds that are wearing over the season, whether it's the carpet that's changing. So someone said, take a look at Leipzig, not the elites. They use different sleds, different carpet apparently. But if you look at the pro division of Leipzig, which was at the start of the season, like someone said that they were there and it was just like ridiculously quick. So I ran the data on that, and you can see it is ridiculously quick.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And huge difference.
Over twice the amount of time compared to London. And I've spoken to a few people that were there, and they said, to be honest with you, it was too quick. It was a little bit like, well, that was a little bit pointless, to be honest. Like we do Hyrox because, well, I do Hyrox because I like the mix of the endurance and the strength and everything. And it doesn't feel like a lot of strength was needed in reality to push those sleds in Leipzig.
I'd agree with that. Like there's a crossover, right? It's not a running race as much as it is a running race. It's not like there's an element of functional fitness in there, and the big part of that is, can you shift the weight? Yeah. And if you're going to be able to do the sled push in a minute and a half, like it's not really taxing enough potentially for the runners to be able to then get off and still run. So it balances it out a little bit when you are getting your splits up to the 2.5-3 minute area when that's normal for everyone. I mean, so if it's normal for everyone to be doing 90 seconds, there's probably not enough of a challenge, and that's a massive gap over the season, though, right? Like it's a huge difference. Do you think that's like? Do you think that's potentially like athletes are fresher at the start of the season, or do you think that's like, or just like the sleds are less worn, or the carpet's less worn? Like, what do you think? It's a combination. That's interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, we can never know like 100% certainty, because like when I'm comparing events, there are different athletes at the events at the end of the day. Like from my personal perspective, like I think I went into London 22 better prepared to push the sled than I had in any of the previous events, and I was like I knew like the carpet is like horrible. Like I'd been training with heavy weights, and I knew how to pace it a little bit better. But so I don't think it comes down to the athletes. I think there is something changing, and I think it's the carpet, maybe it's the sleds, something like that. We still don't know of any certainty, but looking at those times in Leipzig got me to look at, well, is it something that's changing over the season? Like someone was talking about, is it the underside of the sleds that are wearing, or is it the carpet? There's more friction in the carpet. So I looked at the first, the top 10 sled push times in the pro divisions for the first 3 races of the season and the last 3 races of the season, and compared those. And again, you can see it's like similar story comparing Leipzig to London. But this time we've got like 30 data points for the early season, 30 data points for the late season, and you can see again it's quite a significant difference.
I wonder if what Hyrox's plan is. I wonder if it's to buy new sleds for the new season or keep the old sleds. Because I mean, I suppose like why would they invest in? That's a huge capital, right? Why would they invest in all new sleds? But it's not to say that it wouldn't get worse. The start of this season could start at 2.5 minutes, and the end of the next season could end in the 6s. Like according to that data, like we're getting some harder and harder sleds. We have to start taking some plates off.
Yeah. So it's overall, like this was about 90 seconds difference. I mean, to me, it feels unrealistic that like just quality like metal sleds or whatever they're made of are like deteriorating just from being pushed on carpet. Like I find it hard to believe.
At that rate as well, at that kind of rate, because if these are only used for for Hyrox competitions. Like, getting used that much, are they? Where you'll be losing that kind of. I mean, you do notice, like on the sleds, you do, when you're pushing, I'm sure you've seen it yourself, you see like the carpet a little bit, if it's not laid perfectly flat. And if you got like an outside lane where it's the furthest one, like, and you can, like, you see guys like not wanting to go in that outside lane. They're like, oh no, hold on, we know that's like the riskiest. And it's like, because you can see it, you can see the waves, you can see like the little momentum. You know, as soon as you push against any form of friction, when you've got, you know, 175, 200 kilograms worth of weight on a sled, including the sled, like a little bit of friction extra can make a sticking points. And if you get a sticking point even like halfway through and you lose the momentum, it makes it not just makes it harder, but it really pushes you into like lactic thresholds area of your you know, capacity wise for your legs, and that's gonna have a huge knock-on effect.
Yeah, 100%. I was in one in the end. I was in the end lane in London, and you know, I had a little lump in the middle that I always had to get over, and it was like the building up, you know. But I think, to be honest, like there's more to it than that. You know, when we're comparing this data, there's 30 data points for each, you know, the early season and late season, men and women. I think there's more to it than just what lane someone gets, you know. But I don't know. I've got no answers really here. I'm just a messenger.
You're the data king, is what you are.
Yeah. So slightly changing the topic, but not completely, is looking at the difference between European and American sleds as well. If you ask any American about Hyrox, the first thing they'll tell you is that it's harder in America because they've got harder sleds. So I ran the data on that, and it certainly shows that the times in America are slower than in Europe. About 1 minute 12 slower in the pro division, and on the men's side, and 26 seconds slower on the women's side. So a little bit less difference on the women, but still a difference. I've not used.
It doesn't make much sense that women's aren't as different, right? Like, it kind of makes it. Maybe it's because of the weight that goes through it. Like, I'm just thinking, like, it seems strange that the argument is only, you know, significantly, like, it's, you know, it's 60% or something, like, less difference, that the effect is having on the women than it is on the men. Like, it should be relative, right? Like, that seems strange.
Yeah, the only I mean, so apparently the main difference in the sleds themselves is the size, the length of the poles. I think the poles are smaller in America, and that can mean you've got to get down lower to get a push on them. Someone suggested that maybe it's because in general women are shorter, and so like for them to get down and push the shorter poles is less difference for them. There's less, like, whereas like
I'm 6'2", and to be honest, when in Vegas we had a test sled that was set up for us to use, and it wasn't the European poles, it was the American poles. Now, on the actual race, I believe they were changed. So it was changed back to the European poles to try and make it like a bit more even for everyone, so everyone like knew what they were racing. But on the practice one, it was brutal. Like, my normal technique of getting my elbows tight, getting tucked in, it simply wasn't effective. Like, and you need to be able to adapt to that, especially as a taller person, taller athlete. Like, getting right down to keep that weight on and the pressure on. It was a challenge, and it was something that I had to adapt and think about. And, you know, we'll take that away and be like, okay, how do I ensure that no matter what comes up? I think that's it, right? I think that's even potentially that the art of this document. It gives us a lot of great detail and data, but it gives us the information to be able to go, what do I need to do to make sure I'm prepared?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Which leads me on, James, to my next slide. Oh no, it doesn't. All right, we'll go on. We'll jump that slide firstly, and we'll go into this one. And you're right. We know all this data. We can't necessarily do anything about it at the time. When you get to a sled, and you just got to deal with what's in front of you. So I've put together these bullet points. Is like, well, what can we do about it? The first one is like, expect the unexpected. So you just got to deal with whatever's in front of you. And if you're going into it expecting it to feel nice, expecting it to feel like 125 kilograms, 175, whatever division you're in, then you're probably going to be surprised at the end of the day if that's what you're practicing with down the gym.
And I think mentally that is draining, right? That is not just obviously the damage it does to your legs when it doesn't feel like that, but the effect mentally it has when you push a sled and you can't move it as quick as you were moving the one in your gym. Even if like I load my gym sled up, I go over the weight and it still doesn't feel the same. So I still need to find that perfect balance for me in my specific gym, because it's there's a good way of working off it is like your rate of perceived exertion. Like when I push the sleds at Hyrox, I got to imagine it's an 8 out of 10. Like it's like nearly an absolute max effort. So I don't care if I get in my gym and it's 350 kilograms because it's a nice smooth surface, the sled is perfect, and if that's it, that's what I have to put on it to make it an 8 out of 10. Then that's what I'm going to do. I could go to another gym and it might only be 200 to get the same rate of perceived exertion. But I think you need to know that, and I think you need to be prepared for that. So mentally, when you come in and you push it, you're not like, I'm dead. Like, and I'm not going to finish this, or everyone's gone, or my time's gone. I think, like, if you allow to get in your own head from this, I think you're right. Expect the unexpected, and then mentally you can't be defeated before the race gets going. Because realistically, the race doesn't start till after the sled. Exactly. But it changes the game at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Those points. Make sure you've got the right footwear. It becomes even more important the heavier the sleds get at the end of the day. I know you've done a video on that yourself on your YouTube channel. I've done an article on it on RoxLyfe as well. So check those out. But yeah, it becomes even more important really. And we've touched on it as well. Practice with the different techniques. Like it might work with straight arms on one day. It might work with your arms tucked in. It might work with you getting your elbows into the poles themselves. I think practicing with different techniques. So if it is feeling weird on the day, if the poles are shorter or longer or whatever, you know how to switch out quickly and just see what's working best.
And you've got an article on these different techniques, right? You've got something where people can look at it and go, I could try that. I mean, I know I've done a video on YouTube about sled technique, but it's great to see images and read through it and things like that. Some people prefer the written word than the video and the audio. So maybe if you've got that article, then it's definitely worth getting hit up, guys, and checking that out, because these are things that you don't know what you're going to get. And I think that first point is key for me. There, expect the unexpected. Like you've got to be able to adapt and overcome, because this is a lot of people work really hard, for months on end to try and complete one of these. And that's, I'm not talking about the elite guys or the guys that like trying to break a PB. Like just to complete one of these is really tough. It's a tough sport, especially in the pro division. Like the weight is heavy. Like, so it's worth spending an extra, day practicing different techniques or taking a session out to just go through some of this stuff to make sure that all that work doesn't unravel you a little bit on the day. I'm not saying it would defeat you, but it might make you feel less comfortable if you're not aware of it or you haven't tried a few different things. So it's worth checking that article out and just going, right, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that this work it pays off?
Yeah, absolutely. And then that last point, I mean, it would be a gamble, but if you really did want to try and get the best possible time based on everything that we've looked at, then you're probably better to compete in America than in Europe than America. Because the sled seems slightly quicker here. And you may want to compete at the start of the season as opposed to towards the end of it, on the off chance that they've got the new carpet or the new sleds or whatever that are going to be quicker at the start of the season.
I'm gonna throw something in there in the mix there to contradict that a little bit. And I know we're not going to talk about it. Maybe we'll have to talk about it another day. But I know you're the king of dates, and I've seen another article that you've wrote about rock zones. Now let's not go into it because we'll go on all day, but rock zones generally seem a little bit shorter in America, just saying. So maybe it's a bit of a maybe it's a balancing act. Maybe it's that element where if you do want to go to Europe to get your sled push time, but maybe those rock zones are a little bit longer in Europe, and you've got to know what works for you. Like we'll go through it another time, but like there's the American athletes can't just write that off. They can't say it's just quicker over here because of one thing. There's multiple different stations in this sport. It's a different game. You got to know what works for you.
Yeah, it's a good point. That's a good point. So that's mainly it. The only other sort of slide that I put together. This is a little bit more technical. Hopefully you can see that, but it compares the finishing positions of the elite 15 at the World Champs in Vegas, and it compares. Well, it shows the finishing positions and then also the sled push positions. How were they performed on the sled push relative to each other? And the graphs have got the trend lines shown for those. So the trend lines are very closely aligned. So it shows that a very good indicator of finishing position in the race was how well someone did on the sled push.
Unless you're Dylan Scott, right? Like,
unless you're Dylan or Chris,
unless you're Dylan Scott, like, he's obviously a phenomenal runner, probably the best runner in the field, but because he's little and skinny and therefore can't push a sled. Sorry, Dylan. The man can pull a sled, I give him that, but he clearly not able to push the sled compared to his finishing place there. That's it. He's an anomaly, but I think he is an anomaly anyway if you see his training.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, I can't remember what his sled push time was. It was something like 3.5 minutes, and then like nothing too shabby about it.
Yeah. I'm just teasing him. He knows he's a beast.
But to be fair, I don't know what this necessarily tells us, other than sled push is pretty important in the scheme of things. There was a greater trend between sled push position and finish position than there was with overall run time. Even though like running makes up like at least 50% of the race, you can't ignore the sled at the end of the day.
No, I'll wrap that up as well with you, man. You can't ignore the sled. The sled is the thing that makes the difference at Hyrox. You've got to be able to run, you've got to be able to ski, you've got to be able to do that good stuff. But if you can't push and pull that sled, and I think evidence here with that push, this data and that evidence of here, that's of what this is showing us, like, right, you got to get on that sled. You got to spend time on that sled. And you got to figure it out. You got to make sure it works for you in all those different positions and all the different variants and variations that can come up on the day. And also that mental game is huge. So I think that shows it's an important part of the race. And, it's something to spend a fair bit of time on and dedicate some training. I know you actually have some, I know you had some technique stuff, but you also got some training tips, right, on your website, where people can have a little look up and see like how they can potentially get ready for this, how they can prepare a little bit better. And it's all free and downloadable
all free. Check it out. Talks about some sort of example training sessions, what you can do if you haven't got a sled, some of the things to consider, like some lunges and single leg exercises, bits like that. So yeah, we've got an article on training for the sled, and then all this data is on there as well. So yeah, it's worth checking out. RoxLyfe.com.
Amazing, Greg. Well, I really appreciate your time and all the work you put into this data. So guys, go check out the website, have a little look. Check out the training articles, check out the techniques. He's put it all there for you. If it's free, it's laid out, it's good to go. He's done the hard work. All you got to do is go push the sled. If you are looking for anything more specific, do check out my website, and we'll get after it. We'll get into the next season, and we'll get chasing after it again. Greg, appreciate you joining me. Thanks for your time.
All right, cheers, mate. Thank you.